Morning, mates. Welcome to the Footy Saturday. And the finals have been taking place the last few nights or last night. I don't know. We're recording this as round 24 is taking place. The last games, they haven't put out the fixture yet. But we had a week off just with the W. And it was a wonderful week of W. And now we're here with... I wanted to talk to this person all year, but I also didn't want to interrupt them because... they are one of the most learned, intellectual comedy people that I know, and it's a joy to speak to them because I don't hyper focus on any other kind of podcasting or content out there because all I do is watch football and write comedy, and so I don't have much time for much else. But this person is one of the creators of my favorite TV show. And then also one of my favorite podcasts. Potentially, as people have said to me, they know the most about American politics, but they're also a diehard Doggies fan. And then they also once dressed up as Osama bin Laden and got within a few meters of George W. Bush. Please welcome Chaz Licciardello.
Hi there, Broden. I love that you put it in the qualifier. One of the most learned comedy people. I think comedy is the important qualifier there.
Yeah.
We're not exactly the ancient Greek philosophers, us comedy people.
Yeah. We just, as I said on Triple M the other morning when I did it, we're good at saying the first thing, and then just if no one looks into the rest of it, then we're fine.
Yes.
I want to talk. I'm not going to do it at the start because I know some people will be like, people are very like, don't talk about comedy, don't talk about American politics. I hate it. I don't want to know anything about it. So it's like me when someone brings up league. So I'll leave that to the back end, but I do want to talk about it in great depth because I feel like I'm obsessed with it and I'm obsessed with everything you do. But I didn't know you were an AFL fan until the day after the AFL 2021 Grand Final because... I was on a Two Guys One Cup podcast and you were representing the Bulldogs and I was representing the D's. And then I asked for your number afterwards because I thought you were so nice. There was lots of different Doggies fans took that day in a different way, but you were just very, very lovely about the whole thing. And you just went in like it was American politics. You went into the statistical details of the game. Do you remember that?
I do. That's pretty much my coping mechanism. Whenever we get just done, I just look at the stats and I try and remove myself from my body and just become AI. That's what I try to do. That's my coping mechanism. And also, it was really hard to be negative about. I mean, look, it's hard to be negative. It was easy to be negative about the Dogs' performance, but it was hard to be negative about the Demons winning a premiership. In that situation, I mean, the Demons and the Dogs, we got a bit in common. The one thing we don't have in common is that the Demons had enormous success in the past, whereas the Dogs didn't even have that. But I was feeling good about the Demons. They deserved that premiership.
It was
and I think
it was one of those years where it really just added to the cool points of the Doggies to know that you were on board and so cool about it. It was a lovely experience. How did you pick the Doggies? I'm from Sydney, so when I got into AFL, I got into AFL basically when it first started as the AFL. So that's when I was about 12. That's 1990. At that point in time, you couldn't possibly go for the Sydney Swans because they were the worst possible team. They were giving away tickets on Hungry Jack's food trays at that point in time, quite literally. Really?
So you couldn't support them. And so at that point in time, I didn't really have any team to support. I kind of I started off just being anti-Melbourne because I was from Sydney. So I just went for West Coast because they were just the only decent non-Melbourne team.
Yep.
But after about 3 years of that, I just thought, these guys are just boring. They're just robots. Like, they're just big, muscly, beefy robots. And so I stopped being able to follow them. And I was just looking for a new team at that point in time. And that's when the Dogs were just about to go bankrupt. And so I've always had a bit of a thing for the underdog, except when I was following West Coast. And so I just started to be a bit interested in them just because they were struggling so much. And then at that exact moment, that was Year of the Dog, right? When all of a sudden they became exciting and Terry Wallace took over and they were trying stuff and And basically, since then, the Bulldogs have been a different team to what they were before, and it's been a really wild ride. And just over but after about sort of 3-4 years of supporting the Dogs, I could never go back after that. They're a very addictive team.
Do you have a favourite player over from when you started to now? Is there one that just rises above the rest?
Look, I was very partial to Brad Johnson when I first started. Just because I mean, it's funny, he's got this reputation of being so happy, and he was when he started. But for the last, I reckon, 10 years of his career, he became like a bulldog. There was a lot of snarling going on from this so-called happy warrior. But at the time, in the 90s, he was a very happy fellow, and I loved the way he played. He was so fast and just so clever. So yeah, he was definitely one of my favourites. But in the modern era of the Dogs, it's hard to go past Libba. I mean, I think he's just so underrated. I think he's been damn near the best player in the game for a long time, but just no one talks about him like that. Often because he's injured, and also he tends to not care in shitty games. He only tends to really turn on when it matters, and so I love his style.
It's funny, Brad Johnson. He came on this for his company Xena, and he is the nicest guy ever. Like we're not football world people on this show, but he was generous enough to come in here and be lovely with us. And he's one of those people where I feel like his reputation and the way he approaches life and people is almost detrimental to how good a player he was, because in the lead up to interviewing him, I went back and watched so much of his content, and he was in bad sides or sides that never got to a flag, a Petrarca-esque player, and that this guy who was so mercurial and kicked goals and was really, really hard at the ball. But you forget it because he's so nice. Same with John Brown a little bit and a few others, yeah.
I like that Brad Johnson. One of the things I loved about him, and this is what I like in a player, I like when a player isn't that big themselves, but they take punishment without complaining about it. They just get on with it, and that was very much his style. I really used to like that a lot. Another one of my favourite players, I know this is very West Coast themed given I'm a Bulldog supporter, but I always used to really love Daniel Kerr as well for the same reason. The guy is so little, and he took so much punishment, and he just kept on getting on with it all the time.
Do you see similarities in Sam and Daniel Kerr in they both have this kind of like aggressive, feral energy to them? I feel like I see a little bit in both of them. Yeah. Why did you like football as a Sydney? So you're like a native Sydney person. Why did you want to watch AFL? That's not natural.
Well, at first I saw it as a great intellectual challenge because I just turned on the TV and there was this game that made no sense. And the commentators definitely did not help at all. It was just Sandy Roberts going, oh! Like they didn't explain what was going on in the slightest. And so I was just trying to work out what the hell this sport was as much as anything. It took me about a year to work it out and from the commentators. And I just loved that it was... all body types and all body shapes can play it. Like there's a role for small people, for tall people, for all kinds of players, for strong players, for skillful players. I like this. There are very few sports where every kind of person can play. That's the first thing. I like the bravery component mixed with the skill and mixed with it's a weird thing to say, but the bravery of the running as well, just people just being under constant pressure of all different kinds, and the fact there was so much tactics involved as well. It's a very tactical sport, and so I love that it's just got everything, brains, brawn, everything all thrown together. And mostly I liked it because it pissed my dad off, because my dad was a rugby league player.
Oh, and really?
Really? He played before they made money.
Wow.
He played. He was making like $500 a game, and then he did his knee, and he's been limping around for the rest of his life.
Oh, my God.
It really pissed him off that I was into AFL. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, wow. Well, let's. I have one more question on footy before we pivot and transition. But this final series, who do you like, and how do you feel about the Doggies?
Well, I'm scared shitless of Hawthorn. We're playing them first final, and I'm really, really nervous about them. They beat us even when they weren't good this year.
Yeah.
And now they're good. So I'm very worried about them. But if we get past them, I reckon. See, the thing that's great about the Dogs, and it's been great the whole time I've been following them, is that they give you great value in that when they switch on, they can beat anyone. But then they can switch off as well. As you discovered during the grand final.
Yes.
But so if we can get past Hawthorn, I'm actually quite confident that we could actually give this a shake, because we're going to have to be playing well to get past Hawthorn.
It's funny.
And if we played that well, then I reckon we can beat anyone. But that's if we beat them.
It's funny you say that. This thought hadn't occurred to me till now, so it's probably wrong. But Hawthorn's age profile isn't as young as people think it is, and the Doggies have a lot of isn't as old as people think it is either. You've obviously got so many young guns coming up, but yeah, there's you're about the same team.
Yeah, well, this year the Dogs have been. One of the untold stories of this year is that the Dogs have been rebuilding on the sly. Like I was actually really nervous about our immediate future last year, because I just thought, look, the midfield are all like 28, 29. They've been carrying the team for a decade. They're going to fall off soon, and we got nothing to replace them. But Ed Richards has just walked into the midfield this year, and he's just a gun, right? They've got this 18-year-old Joel Frazier who's playing the back line, who I reckon has, I'm not saying he's going to be the next Bont, but he's basically the same body shape as Bont, and he's a really good player for an 18-year-old. I reckon he's going to be a midfielder for sure. And he's just going to walk into the midfield another 2 years' time. Riley Sanders is good as well, and we've been building through here. Garcia's been turning up. So I actually think that we are a younger team than people think. We have been rebuilding. And that's not just good for this year, but it's good for the next few. So I'm actually much more positive right now than I would have been if you talked to me 12 months ago, when I thought we were looking at 2 or 3 years down the bottom of the ladder. I don't think we necessarily need that.
You are so right about that. Do you remember, you were talking about the there was a time when they were talking about the Bevo sacking in the middle of the year, where there was word saying that he wouldn't admit that they were rebuilding, or he wouldn't admit that they do need to go back, as the Bevo knows that the list isn't as good. That was the rhetoric, is Beveridge knows the list isn't as good as people are saying it is, which just completely turned out to be entirely false. Entirely made up. But how did you feel about Bevo in the middle of the year, when you had that period where which every team has had now, where you were bad for 5 weeks?
Look, it's not so much that there was a few weeks this year where I thought he wasn't doing too well. I mean, I didn't think he was doing that well, but I actually thought, to be honest, I thought Bevo should have left a year or two ago, because I thought we were coming to the end of that period. And I thought it was time for us to rebuild, and we should get a new coach when we rebuild. Not because I thought Bevo was hopeless or anything, but I just thought that's how it works. You know, coaches are good for a generation or so, and then you get a new coach when the team starts again, because Bevo isn't going to be there for the 4 years it would take to rebuild. So I thought, get rid of him at the beginning, allow, like Hawthorn have done with Mitchell, allow him a few years to suck basically as they're rebuilding, and then they can build up again. So I was hoping for Bevo to leave 2 years ago. When he didn't, I just thought, well, is he going to end up getting sacked unceremoniously when we don't perform as well, when we're on our way down? And I thought maybe halfway through this year that might be coming, but I wasn't cheering for him to go. I just thought it was just inevitable, the way the footy cycle works, that we were going to start to suck, and then he'd get the sack, and even though it's not necessarily his fault, that's just where we were in our development. But then I was just surprised when all of a sudden, I mean, I don't think he necessarily, he's a mastermind who planned this. A lot of this fell into place. Like, he wasn't playing for Ed Richards to become the leader of our midfield. That just happened. You know, like, that was because Libba was injured, and you need someone to just step in there. You know, he wasn't planning for Rory Lobb to become our best defender. Like, that wasn't a plan. It just kind of happened. You know, so yeah, we've gotten lucky, I think. But yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, it makes me feel good about the D's, because I feel like the D's is the Dogs of last year a little bit, where they, out of necessity, have had to start playing a lot of young people and putting a lot of pressure on them, and you find out so much information when you do that. So it actually does make me feel a little bit better about the D's and where we're at the moment.
Can I make you feel better about the D's as well? I don't know how long you've been following the D's for, but I've been following, as I say, AFL for 30 years, and the cultures of teams don't change much over that time. It's weird. I don't understand why, but teams just keep on reproducing the same styles over and over again. And the D's have always been an on-year, off-year team. They've been doing it forever. The whole time I've been following it, through the 90s, through the noughts, they'd make the grand final. The year after, they're 12th.
Yeah.
Then the year after, they're 4th. And they just do this all the time.
Danaher was very famous for that. The Danaher era was very much, on-off year. Do you think that's that's when you're a smaller club and you can't regenerate, or you don't get the free agents that other teams get? It's just a bit harder for smaller teams, or has the Dogs? What's the Dogs' personality over 30 years?
Yeah, we've never been like that. Like, we've never been on and off like that. Like the Dogs have had, like, at least since the year of the dog period, we've had 3 eras where we've been there and thereabouts for 6 or 7 years at a time, usually either at the bottom of the finals or making it to a preliminary final and just not being able to break through. And the thing that changed with Bevo was that we just for once we broke through a preliminary final. Like, we had, like, I think 6 preliminary finals in a row that we didn't get past. It was very annoying, but then that's been our character. We've been very consistent. In fact, we've been actually one of the most consistent teams of the AFL era. Like, which would surprise people. If you look at the number of times teams have made the finals, you got Geelong up at, I think, 25, and then you got the Swans and West Coast on 24. They're the 3 undisputably most consistent teams. But then you've got Essendon, Collingwood, and the Dogs and Hawthorn, I think, all on 18, or maybe Hawthorn's on 19.
Right.
But basically we're just, like, we're in that bunch that have just been almost always in the finals. But then there'll be 3 years where we suck, where we go down to the bottom and then come back up again, and then we're just in that middle rung sort of finals, not quite good enough to win the premiership, but sort of there and thereabouts. That's been the dog style. But the Demons, yeah, they're not like that. They go down, they go up, they go down, they go up. And I would fully expect next year the D's to be preliminary finals, because that's what they do.
Yeah, well, they did. That was 2020 was a down year when they were really revving up for it, and then so that would be nice. That would make me feel nice. I think we should get McRae. That's my one little thing. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, McRae would be very good for you guys.
But he won't go maybe now. He was good today.
Well, he keeps getting dropped, right, Chaz?
Yeah. Look, I think McRae's gettable. I really do. I think that Bevo only plays him when he gets 50 possessions in the VFL. Like, it's just he hasn't played many games this year at all, and when he does, he's often out of position. I think that the ride's on the wall, and he's got heaps of good years left in him. I mean, I'm feeling really bad for him because he's been such a key part of our team, and I don't think he's been treated very well. So I think he's gettable, and I reckon you should go for him.
Okay, thank you. I will pass that on, and I appreciate it. I want to pivot awkwardly to a career question for you. So you're a member of a comedy group who were, when Tom and I were in high school, were the iconic ABC group, and there was a period once where the 4th member of Arnie Donna, performing member Adrian, and I, when we were in high school, there was a sketch where you guys put stockings on your head and went into shops, and we thought that was funny.
Yes.
So we walked around our neighborhood doing that, like, just complete fucking idiots. Like, so you were very influential.
And what happened?
I went to prison, and nothing happened, thankfully. But that's fucked that we did that. But it's more so you had an incredibly successful career with a comedy group on the ABC, and you'll see where I'm going with this. And then you've pivoted to what appears to be your other passion outside of comedy, and you've made a career where comedy is a large part of what you do in producing Australian comedy, and then making a podcast about something else that you're passionate about. So my question to you is, can you talk me through how that went and how that happened?
Sure. Well, look, there are 2 different things happening at the same time that led to this.
Right.
The first of which was, I've always been acutely conscious of not hanging around too long doing the same thing.
Yep.
Because if you're successful, and for a period there we had, as you noted, people walking around with stockings on their head, copying us. If you're successful in comedy in particular, you know that there are a bunch of 14-year-olds watching you, taking in every single thing you do, and in 15 years' time, they will not only be doing what you do back at you, but they'll be doing it with a bunch of other influences that you didn't have, that came after you as well. And so they'll be better than you. And you're going to be against people who are better than you, and you're going to lose. And that's why you look washed up and pathetic when you're 45 or 50 in comedy, because all the people who you're competing against are you plus more. Right? And
Fuck, that's a good point.
That. You just can't. And so I was always... Yeah, so I was always very, very conscious of this, that don't be one of those people, those sad people who are trying to compete against the people who are inspired by you. And so I was keen to not stay doing the same thing in comedy. I could do comedy, but not the same thing in comedy for too long. That was the first thing. And I felt like time was drawing nigh when I was getting to about 40. I thought, okay, it's time to go out on top, buddy. That was the first thought. But the second thought was that I've always been into the news, just generally into the news, and I kind of was one of some of the comedy we were making was news-based comedy. Like we're doing comedy about the elections. We're doing comedy about, like, we had a whole series about the news industry being shit called The Hamster Wheel, and which I really liked. But when I was doing it, I was just thinking to myself at one point in time, I'm kind of become an expert on news to make this show, just to make jokes about it. And I know all the things that they're doing wrong, and I know all the things I wish they were doing. And I'm just sitting there just throwing shit at them. Why don't I do it myself? I'm in a better position to do it than they are. I'm famous. People will watch me just because I'm me. And on top of that, the ABC will give me a show that they wouldn't give some journalist. And so I can afford to experiment a bit. And at the same time as that, I've got an education. I've learnt how to write in a succinct and entertaining way. I've got all the I don't need to make money because I'm on the ABC. I've got all the components to actually make a decent news show. Why don't I just do it rather than pissing and moaning about everyone else? And so I thought that it was a good opportunity to experiment in moving in a different direction. So I wasn't just a sitting duck for the next generation, and to try and chase someone else rather than being chased by the next generation. And so that was the idea behind Planet America, to kill two birds with one stone. Doesn't mean I'm never doing comedy again, but the comedy I do ain't going to be like the one and everything. My days dressed up as a chicken or running around naked and following politicians, those days are over.
It's such a good point you make about being an old comedian or an older comedian who's been around for a while. You do either have to support and listen to the new generation coming up, or you have to become antagonized by the whole system and get mad and lock down and become aggressive. That's your two options. They're your two pathways.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And totally. If you're gonna keep on staying in the comedy game as you get older, what you need to do is as you say, you need to be a support act for other people. Otherwise, you're just getting in the way. You're roadkill.
Yeah, and it's a nice position to be in, to be able to just watch and enjoy other people doing that stuff and try and help. Yeah, it's a very good point. You said something on Pep or on Fireside or on... So Tom, this man's a maniac.
Yeah.
He does a half-hour show called Planet America, which is an ABC show that pretty much goes through, in the peak of American politics, here's what happened this week, and they'll go into detail. It's a very well-produced show. And then there's the next show that they've just added, which goes for an hour, doesn't it? Is it an hour?
Yeah. Yes.
Which is called Fireside Chat, which is the same on the same set, but it's just a bit more of a longer version of it. And you're like, well, then that's surely enough work. And then on top of that, this man has got a podcast that he does sanctioned or unsanctioned by the ABC.
Very much unsanctioned.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he does a third show where he goes for 3 hours on the same content from the week, twice weekly at the moment, that goes for 3 hours, not because he runs out of shit to say, but because they won't let him go any longer.
Yes.
Is that fair if I said all of that correct?
It's a venting experience.
So
that's all correct. That's all correct.
And so you do these. I think I spoke to someone about this, a mutual friend of yours who works on the show, Melina Wicks, who's a fantastic writer as well. And I agree with you that I don't think there's anyone in the world who knows more about American politics than you. Like, no one does more research than you, genuinely. And it's fascinating to see. But what's really interesting is you once said in one of the depths of some of your content that I was listening to, you're like, yeah, I should get back to America soon. I haven't been there in like 15 years. When's the last time you went to America?
It was for the War on Everything. It was the third series of the War on Everything. So that's 2009.
Chaz, you could get on a Jetstar or on a United flight for like $500, man. Do you have no interest in going?
Oh no, I've got a huge interest in going. I miss America so much. Honestly, I love America. Like I've never felt more at home than when I was strolling around New York, just pushing people out of the way, just being a real dickhead. I loved it. I loved it so much. but I'm just always working, Broden. I'm just always busy.
Oh man!
And the thing is that the work that I do, I like. It's not that I can't do it in America. I could do it in Antarctica. It involves reading news on my computer. But there's no advantage to doing it in America. And I spend 14 hours a day reading, buddy. Like if I was in America, it'd be a distraction, and I wouldn't do the work, and the show would suffer as a result. Ironically. Oh man. So it's like if I was an interviewer, then that'd be great to go to America, but to interview people. But I'm not. That's not what I do. I'm not actually a journalist. Even though I've been working on this news show for 10 years, I'm not a journalist. I don't think like a journalist. I'm just a nerd who just studies shit online and then regurgitates it in endless podcasts. It's just a personality problem that I'm exhibiting here. It's not a career.
Well, no, that's good to know. Well, because Tom and I, we're experts in America in a different way. Like Tom is probably as well versed as you on America, but in different ways. Yeah. In that what's your favorite burger?
Probably I like now you've made me look silly because I can't remember the name of it. Shake Shack.
It's a Shake Shack guy?
But more like Jersey Mike's. I could talk you through Jersey Mike's at great length.
Are you familiar with Jersey Mike's, Chaz?
I haven't been to Jersey Mike's. The thing about America with fast food is it is quite regional. And I've had every single fast food option in New York. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
I literally, my honeymoon, all I did in my honeymoon was just walk up and down Manhattan streets. I reckon I walked through every street in Manhattan just looking for fast food. Right? And, my wife was sick. It was very romantic. My wife was sick in bed and just spewing, and I was just walking all day for fast food. That was my honeymoon. Because I was worried about putting on weight, because I was eating so much shit, I would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and spend 2 hours on a treadmill. And then I would spend the rest of the day eating shit. And I ended up getting quite sick myself, but it was lovely.
One of the kind of
I recommend it to all.
The hacks of, because we've spent a fair bit of time living there and also traveling and touring there as a group. And one of the things that happens is when you go to America, you do the thing where you're like, I'm going to kill myself with food. But then once you get to a place where you reach a new plane where you're like, hang on, I need to just start eating like someone who wants to be alive for a prolonged period. And then what happens is you start to eat. Get to that. You start to eat the salads and the sandwiches and what other stuff.
And like the healthy Mexican that goes around, like
and
you in vogue.
And then you go, the food on this level is actually incredible. Like it's better. There's salad options. There's two places in LA. One's called Tender Greens and one's called Sweet Greens. And they're both the best salads you'll ever have.
Yeah, and that Lemonade place.
Lemonade is like a sandwich salad shop that's incredible.
Awesome.
We've transitioned. I have more important questions in very limited time, so I do want to get back to what we're talking about.
So you're talking about Tony Martin.
Chaz. Yes, no, I did the longest question, like the biggest load up, and then you just dropped out and I was like, get fucked. But I thought it would have been great.
Well, I was up to. I dropped out when you were talking about Tony Martin making a mainstream show for nerds.
So essentially, what I basically said was, there's these platforms now that are shifting podcasting from being a very off-Broadway niche thing to being trying to figure out how to commercialize it as radio and TV die. But what your content does is it sort of has a flagship on the old media, but it's a place where you kind of put out, if you're a fan of this stuff and you really want to get into the reads of it, we're not going to, you aren't thinking commercially at all in a very respectful way. And that it's really just there to take. And it's more an offering to people who want to really, really get nerdy. And my question is, the content you make, how much of it is built for what you think your fans will enjoy, and how much of it is you going, this is just what I'm passionate about, and if you like it, get on board?
Right. Yeah, well, you really get into my head there, actually, to be honest, because everything you just said is actually what I was thinking with the podcast. In that I was thinking, there were two things that I was thinking. The first of which was, I love the ABC and I love public broadcasting, but I've been, for the last probably 25 years, I've been wondering about the future of public broadcasting, because, especially with the internet, you just start going, well, why does this exist? Because it used to exist because there was no other means to get some of these messages out with commercial TV. But with the internet, is there any reason at all for it to exist? And I thought to myself, the best way public broadcasting can work in the future is to multicast, is to use the fact that there is a TV show, there's a TV channel, and there's a radio channel, and there's different kinds of radio channels, and then there's online stuff as well, to have different versions of the same show on different platforms, and for one part of the show is to then direct you to the next part of the show if you're interested, rather than all being contained in one show. I thought that was the future of the ABC. And so I wanted to experiment with that with Plain America. And that was exactly what we did. On Wednesday, you've got basically, it's just for the spectators. It's like the grand final type people, rather than the hardcore anoraks. Friday is the people who are kind of are a bit into politics, but they know their stuff, but they're not like just super nerds. And then if you want even more than that, then you go to the podcast, where it's the people who are addicts and there's something wrong with them, right? That was the idea. And they all inform each other, and you don't repeat yourself in any of them. So people can just hop from one to the other. That was the whole point. So in terms of, so I wasn't trying to make money. It was like I saw it as an adjunct of the ABC show. And it would be an ABC podcast if the ABC let me make it an ABC podcast. But they have their own ideas of how they think podcasts should be. And hey, I guess they know best, so they can do their thing. And I just thought, well, screw you. I'm just going to do it anyway, the way I think it should be. And so when I'm making the show, the podcast, I'm making what I think is the most complete form of coverage when I think of the other two shows added to it. So imagine if someone watches all of these, are they going to get everything that I think that they should get? I don't have to do more work for this because I'm doing that work anyway. The reading I require to make the show not shit, even the Wednesday show, is the same reading that I'm doing for the podcast. So it's easy for me to just go, okay, here is the stuff which I found, which is really good. And like none of it was on Wednesday, none of it was on Friday, but here is a place I can put it. So it is very much about what I think I want to say rather than I think what they want to hear. If they don't want to hear it, then I'll know pretty quickly. The numbers aren't going to lie, and then I might reevaluate. But so far it's been growing. So I think what I want to say and think we should say is at least harmonized with the audience. And one more thing I'd say along the lines of what you were saying is this is also with a mind for the future, because you used a phrase that I use all the time, which is TV is dying. And I think no one is more aware of that than people who make TV. It is dying fast. And the question is, what's next? I don't know what's next. All I know is that whatever it is, I'll find my audience through the podcast, not through the TV show. And so I'm just want to build this podcast as a bridge to whatever is coming next. and then I'll have my audience there that I can do something new to, or maybe the same thing. We'll see. But that's the idea.
Yep, that's all exactly right and very well said. And yes, good to know, and good for us to listen to, Tom. My last question will be about the US at the moment. We're recording this at the end of the week of the DNC, which is the Democratic National Convention, where they've just been revving up their base for the last week to get behind Kamala Harris. I find what I'm struggling with at the moment is to try and get some, because, and there's not enough of you at the moment, Chaz, but I'm looking for really independent. I just can't believe everything that's being said in the US, because it's so much momentum for Kamala, and it's the same things being said over and over and over and chopped up into little YouTube videos where it's like she's got all the momentum, but it always ends with, but we don't know who's going to win. It's going to be a close election. And no one can say anything beyond that. And what I like about your show and what I like about you is I feel like you're the most educated, but you are also very healthy. You're a very healthy skeptic, and you're very healthily cynical. You're like, if you are saying something positive about, and I'm happy to say that I would like Kamala to win over Trump. So whenever you say anything positive about that movement, I know that you're saying it through clenched teeth, because you really don't want to say something unless it's really, really, really going to happen. Is that fair to say?
It's true. That is true. That's very fair to say.
Yeah. So how do you feel if you had to pick someone today, which is an awful thing to say to someone who is as well versed as you, which way would you say it goes?
Well, look, I will answer your question, but let me just say that we are 2 weeks too early to be able to really give an informed answer to that, because Kamala Harris, her problem has never been what we've seen so far. She's always been a decent speaker at a rally or something like that. People act like she's an idiot. She's not an idiot. She's a smart person, and she's a good strategic person. So, and what we've seen so far is a lot of strategy and good strategy. So none of this is, it's a surprise to me how successful she's been, but it's not a surprise that this was a strong period. The question mark over her has always been when she's not in control. That's always been the question mark. When she ran for the presidency back in 2020 in the primary campaign, she did great on her set pieces, but when she was thrown off balance, she did not deal with it at all well. And so far, they haven't been doing interviews and they haven't been doing press conferences, which is smart, because they don't have anything to talk about at the moment. They have no policies. She's only just started, right? That's fine. But that's her weak point. And at some point in time, that's going to have to change. And I'll tell you when it's going to change. It's going to change at the debate. She's going to be able to memorize a whole bunch of stuff, but she's up against a chaos agent. Trump is going to say something insane, for sure. And then the question is going to be, how does she react to that? Now, if she gets through that unscathed, then I would say to you, she's in a really good position, because then she can Kevin 07 it all the way to the election. She can smile, have some nice T-shirts,
go on, Rove,
run a lot of ad campaigns, and not say anything. That would be fine. It's a classic election campaign. She can do that, and if she gets past the debate, then she will do that. Then I would say,
does she just need to break even with Trump on a debate, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's all that's needed. I think she just needs to not have a bad debate.
Yeah.
But if she has a bad debate, then she's going to have to chase it. She's going to need to do presses and stuff to make up for it, and then she's going to be in a negative spiral, and then potentially things could go very wrong. So if I was predicting right now, I would say I think she's just ahead. But I think that could change very fast after the debate. So get back to me in 2 weeks.
Okay, good to know. Well, Chaz, thank you so much for covering everything with us, mate, from footy to podcasting to Shake Shack.
Yeah.
And I hope the Dogs do well for you.
Thank you very much, and no problems at all. And if you ever want to get me back on to talk about fast food,
yes,
you know my Instagram account is Baby Got Snack.
Okay,
right?
great.
Fast food is my third love.
Okay, great.
Right, and so
Tom's going off sugar at the moment, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah, trying very hard.
But
Good luck, man. I've been there before.
There you are, Chaz. Yes, the only Damien Callanan, who's also been a guest on this pod, is the only person I know following you. And you've had a gay time sanger, and you've had the Rainbow Gay Time. And what do you?
It's been old. I've been a bit slack the last couple of years. I'm gonna get back on. But my point is, I have a pedigree of obsessing about fast food. That's my point.
Shit, yeah, mate. Thank you so much, Chaz. Check out all of Chaz's content from Planet America to the Fireside Chat to Pep on wherever you get podcasts. Enjoy the Doggies, woof woof, and bounce that pill.